51st year, it asks a number of questions. One of the questions that it asks is, are you proud or very proud of Britain's history? And you know what? It's really extraordinary. In 2013, the answer to that was 86% said yes, they were proud or very proud of Britain's history. That figure has now collapsed down into the mid-60s, but most interestingly, amongst the 18 to 24-year-olds, that number is down below 40%. Something very big has shifted. Now, I would accept that there is a degree of generational change. You know, go back 10, 20 years, and people would say, well, you know what? You know, my dad was in the war, my mum worked in a factory making Lancasters, and maybe some of that link has gone. And I think we have to accept that. However, you know, I have been railing about this. We have got an educational establishment that goes right the way through primary school, secondary school, university, that seems to somehow rejoice in talking down Britain's past. You would have thought we were the only country in the history of mankind that had ever conducted slavery, far from being the one nation, actually, that ended it and lost a lot of money and a lot of lives driving it out. You would think the British Empire was the worst empire that had existed in the history of mankind. And yet it's the only empire ever created that now has a club of former members called the Commonwealth. And I think that is what is going on. I put it to you, Lloyd Brossenwell, that actually a sort of a Marxist takeover of people who hate the country, hate what it stands for, and they've done their job.
Well, first of all, it's not the only club. There's the organisation Francophonie as well, and there are other clubs of those former colonial powers. But I do think that we have got something wrong, but I'm not sure it's Marxist teaching. I think it's nuanced teaching is very difficult. People are being taught to find the right or wrong answer, and sometimes there is no right or wrong in the world. There is just what happened in the past, and we can't put moral judgments on these things. And I think
but we are doing that.
Well, I do agree that we have strayed into that situation. I also think that the timing of the last poll was very interesting. It was straight after the Olympics, and I think the Olympics in London 2012 really did bring together a feeling of Britishness. And that opening ceremony, to me, summarised the very best of Britain. It showed Windrush, it showed slavery and the fight for votes for women, but it also showed our humour and our comedy and our and our music and our cultural talents. And that's, I think, what we should be teaching. That Britain is not just flag-waving Second World War. There is a plethora of history there, some good, some bad, but all that we should understand and kind of respect.
2013 at 86% was a high point, although the previous decades were well in the 80s. The other thing, John Redwood, that is going on is there's a pretty big collapse in support and belief in our basic fundamental democratic system, our constitutional monarchy. I mean, you know, I just feel that we ought to be teaching people that this little speck on the map actually achieved quite remarkable things.
No, I agree with that, and I think it's very depressing how distorted history is now. Of course, there were some bad bits, but they seem to be the only things we concentrate on and constantly apologise for. And all the great things that our country can be rightly proud of get written out of the story or in some way damaged. I mean, when did we last hear about the huge technological advances that are sometimes called the Industrial Revolution, which then enable many other countries to get more people out of poverty and to create great cities and great industries? When do we hear about that continuous golden thread of progress from tyranny and aristocracy governing everybody to popular votes and to popular engagement and public opinion playing a very important part in debate and policy formation? When do we hear about the contributions we've made globally by often intervening in wars on the sides of those that want self-determination of smaller countries, that want greater freedom for peoples, that stand up to big tyrannies? And above all, as you rightly say, something we should be enormously proud of is our parents and grandparents who took on the Hitler genocide against the Jews and all the nasty features of the Nazi regime on our own for a bit before America came in, completely against the odds. Yeah.
I'm also worried, Lloyd, you know, only 53% now across the board, let alone the younger generation, where the figures are even worse, say they take pride in the way Britain's democracy works. And when you think, We can argue about governments and how good or bad they are. But you compare us to most countries around the world, the fact that the figure's as low as that, I find that very worrying.
Yes, I think that there is all countries, all democratic countries, need something to bond, need a national myth, as it were. America has this kind of American dream as their national myth. Britain, we have kind of developed a national myth of standing apart, standing strong. You know, kind of in the Second World War, even though we were alone, we stood apart. You know, kind of, and that has kind of been a narrative. You know, part of Europe, but on the edge of, you know, kind of all that narrative.
British exceptionalism.
And, yes, British exceptionalism. And the French have it the same, the resistance, and, you know, kind of, even though it's probably not historically true. The problem I think we have now in Britain, and in lots of Western world, actually, because those figures of collapse of democracy you'll see in all of European countries, actually, is that those myths were based, or those stories, not necessarily the myths, but those stories and those narratives were based on things that happened almost 80 years ago now, and people need to find the new relevance for them.
Yeah.
Now, I think there are elements of that, but someone needs to weave that together. And we need a national curriculum that says this is the modern version of what we had in the past.